should say good evening. Yeah, how are you? I'm wonderful. Sweating buckets. It's it's positively balmy up in Scotland at the moment. I mean, I would say probably the last couple of weeks, weather-wise, it's been fantastic. Well, I say fantastic. It's been really warm because I know some people are not a fan of the heat, but I do like a bit of sun, I have to say. So I've got a wee bit kind of colour about me. So yeah, how are you? I hope you're all. I just thought that was a spider I could see there. Is it? No, it's not. It's a bit of sweet sticking down. Yeah, I hope you're all well. I'm good. I was away last weekend up in Oban. Had a fantastic time. Went to Mull, went to Iona on the ferry, and you know what? There's something really nice about just getting away from everything. You know, leaving. I didn't even take my mobile phone. I actually forgot it. But I didn't even want to take my mobile phone when we went on the ferry. There's something really nice about just getting away and, you know, getting back to nature. Being out on sea. Being out on the sea, I should say. Yeah, beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to kind of go up to the north of Scotland, then I suggest you do it. Really nice. Yeah, that was last weekend. This week, what I've been up to. We were supposed to be going to the computer club. It was meant to be the first computer club since February last year. Obviously, because of COVID, we couldn't go ahead with it. And yeah, we were meant to be doing it, but unfortunately a few people couldn't make it, so we decided to kind of leave it until next month. I was looking forward to it actually. I was looking forward to going along. So we've got that next month. Football, yeah, you know what? Fair play to England. They played well. They played Germany off the park. They thoroughly deserved the victory. There's no question of that. I think the thing about England is they need to stop kind of running before they can walk. You know, they get carried away. They get one decent win, and then there's talking of winning the thing. I mean, to be perfectly blunt, if England were going to win another tournament, this is probably about the best opportunity they've got. I mean, they're playing Ukraine. On paper, England should annihilate them, but you know you can't take any single game for granted. I mean, the fact that Ukraine have even got through to this stage, you know, I mean, look at Croatia. They got to the final of the World Cup 2-3 years ago, whatever it was. So yeah, I mean, good luck England. Do I want them to win? Probably not. And it's just because of the media. The media and the pundits go on and on about it, and that's why I know I've got quite a few English friends who don't want England to win. So you know that says it all. That says it all about them. But this week I was actually last night. I was very lucky to have a chat with Andy Walker from Taskset. Now, if you don't know who Taskset are, they were an early 80s, 1980s. They came out, I think their first game came out in 1983. They put out quite a number of games. No, they weren't very prolific. I mean, they didn't put out a lot of games. In fact, actually, when you think about it, they put out very few games, primarily for the C64. And they were all, you know, most of them were fantastic. There were a couple I wasn't overly keen on, but yeah, one of the games, or two of the games I should say, Super Pipeline and Super Pipeline 2 are my absolute favourite C64 games. If you watch any of my live streams, you'll know how much I love Super Pipeline games. So yeah, Andy came on the channel last night, and I said to him, look, we'll try and keep this to an hour. 2 hours and 20 minutes later. So and it was me that ended it. I said, right Andy, listen, we better bring this to a close and let you get off to your bed. But what an absolute gentleman he was. He really was. I'm really looking forward to getting the video out there. If you've got any interest in early kind of games, then it's one you'd really can't afford to miss. I will put out as a podcast as well. So yeah, that was really, really nice. And next Tuesday I've got the same again with Mr. John here from Sensible Software. Excuse me. Looking forward to talking to John. Have I met him? I've been in the same room as him once, many moons ago. I think it was 2005. I was down at a Retrovision, and John here was there. Ben Douglas was there as well. So looking forward to speaking to John. I'll just need to get some questions pulled together for him. But it's all been good. So listen, what I'm going to do. Last week I spoke about my experiences with the ZX Spectrum, and this week I'm going to talk about the Atari. Excuse me. Where did I start? Now, if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you've probably heard these stories 10 times, because I've turned into my dad and my granddad. I repeat myself. But when you've been doing waffles for the best part of 8 years, it does get quite difficult to kind of talk about anything fresh, because you can't go making up new memories. You can only talk about the memories you had. So anyway, Atari, where does my sort of experience or memories from Atari stem from? The first ever the first time I became aware of Atari, it was when Atari 2600 came out. Came out in 1978, 1979, I think it was. It was getting advertised on TV all the time. I think Kenny Everett actually advertised it at one point. It was getting pimped on TV all the time. And being what age would I be? I'd be about 11, 12 years old. I was aware of computer games, or I was aware of video games. You had Space Invaders was out at that point. And the thought of being able to actually own a machine that could play Space Invaders, even thinking about it now, makes me excited. It really does. It sounds ridiculous to think, how can you be so excited? But 1979, there was no such thing as video games, home video games. So when this thing came along, the thought that you could play Pac-Man, you could play Asteroids, you could play Centipede on your TV in your living room was just mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And I quite literally would have killed my granny to be able to get an Atari. But my mum and dad, they didn't have the money, they couldn't afford it. And they quite simply said, don't ask for it, son, because you're not going to get it. But one of my mates, Nick was, I always kind of felt sorry for him. His dad worked in the oil rigs, and his mum virtually used to go to bingo every night of the week, and she just used to give Nick money every day and say, there you go, son, away you go. And so Nick would basically just be out the house the whole time, and he used to come to my house a lot. And this one particular day, he turned up at the door, and he had this big bag, and I think, what the hell was that? And it turns out it had an Atari 2600 in it. He had the Pac-Man and Combat, and we set this up in the living room. And you need to bear in mind, this was the times where you only had one TV. I mean, some people didn't even have a TV back then, but we had a colour TV, and it was the only TV in the living room. I should say it was the only TV in the house, and it was in the living room. And so anyway, we managed to set this thing up. I think it was the summer holidays. We set this Atari up, and oh my god, I was in seventh heaven. I really was. It was just amazing, absolutely amazing. So we sat and we played Pac-Man, and we played Combat constantly all day. And then it got to about 7 o'clock at night, and my mum's like, Nick, I think you better get going home, son. So he's like, right, okay. So he was going to go, and he said to me, look, why don't I come up tomorrow and I'll just leave this here. You can have it overnight. So that was it. I sat and played the Atari 2600 all night. I really did. It was just awesome. I ended up getting a really, really bad blister on my hand, actually, because Atari joysticks, whilst I do have a lot of nostalgia and love for them, they're not the comfiest joysticks, especially when they're quite new. But anyway, yeah, so Nick turned up the following day and he took his Atari away, and that was the last I ever got to play in a 2600. So fast forward, I don't know, maybe 2 years, we had a little shopping centre down the road from us called the Mall. Very, very, descriptive name. And this one day I was aware that there was a computer shop. Now, I didn't really know. I mean, I knew what a computer was. Obviously, I'd heard of computers, but I'd never seen one. Computers were the kind of thing that you saw in offices and that kind of stuff. But this guy had a computer shop, so I went in one day, and I mean, the computer shop itself was tiny. It was probably maybe, I know it doesn't help you, but twice the size of this living room that I'm in. It wasn't big at all, and it was a guy called Ray Agostini. He was an Italian guy, lived in Livingston, and he had all these Atari machines, and he had I can't remember how many. He had maybe like 2 or 3 Atari 800s, and he had 2 or 3 Atari 400s all set up, and they had the disk drive, and he had all these games. And I remember going in there this one day, and it was Bruce Lee, and Summer Games were on it, and I think there was a kind of demo mode of some sort, and I was just like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I'd seen things like Space Invaders and what have you, but to see something this amazing looking, to me it was like an interactive cartoon. To see this thing on a TV and you could actually control it was just like, it was incredible. It really is. I mean, as I said, even talking about it now, I just get excited, and that's why I still get excited about being able to play MAME and playing the C64. The excitement of being able to see video games on your home TV, that excitement for that has never left me. And so anyway, in this computer shop, Ray, it depends what kind of mood he was in. He was a nice enough guy, but if you're the only person in there, he was always fine. He would let you play, he would let you load up games and play them, but he always knew that I was never going to buy anything. I didn't have a computer, I couldn't afford a computer, so he knew that he was never going to get any money from me. So then when like an adult would come in to buy a computer or whatever, he wouldn't tell us to leave, but you could tell that he didn't want to talk to us. I think he kind of had his fill with us sometimes. But no, he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. I think he's still alive, actually. I'm sure. In fact, I'll give you a quick anecdote. About 2 years ago on Facebook, somebody posted saying that they were wanting to sell all these computers, and there was like a boxed Atari Falcon, there was a number of Atari 800s, and they were all in immaculate condition. And it turns out that this guy's granddad was Ray. I think Ray was, like I say, I think he's still alive, but he was. He's now in an old folks' home, and I got in touch with his grandson. I says, look, I don't want to buy your computers. I says, but it was your granddad that first got me interested in computers. It's because he had a shop that gave me a love of a hobby that 40 years later has never left me, and here I am still talking about the same thing. And he contacted his granddad, but I never heard back. I don't know. I think I think Ray's got Alzheimer's or senile dementia or something like that. But I would absolutely love to talk to Ray just to kind of reminisce. That would have been really, really nice. But anyway, so Ray had this computer shop. He had all these Atari machines. But again, at that point, the Ataris, they were very, very expensive. They cost a lot of money. I mean, I don't know how much they were. They're probably £300-400, and I didn't have a job. I was still at school, so there's no way I was ever going to get one. I mean, you had the Atari 2600, and then the Atari 800 was like a 5 steps above a 2600. I mean, this was just phenomenal. It had amazing sound, it had all the colours, it had the fantastic graphics. So I used to go into the computer shop and, as and when I could, and then I kind of sort of forgot about computers for a wee while, until eventually, I got a part-time job, and I got a C64. The Spectrum came out, the Commodore 64 came out, and eventually bought a C64, which I'll talk about in another video. But kind of getting back to Atari, so after I got the C64, none of my pals had Ataris, and the only time I ever got to see an Atari was when I used to go to the computer club. Now, not the computer club I was talking about 10 minutes ago. This was the original computer club. It was in a school, Environment High School. It was every Wednesday, and I think it was 6 o'clock it used to start. And this is how keen we were. Me and my mate, we had a Spectrum. I had my C64, and we used to we had to walk, and it was probably, I reckon it was easily two miles, maybe even more than that. And we used to walk sometimes, and I shit you not, sometimes carrying a portable TV and the computer up to this computer club. Now, we called it a computer club. It should really have just been renamed Piracy Club, because that's all we did. You would set up your computer and you would just swap games and copy games. I mean, I was a C64 guy. All the cool kids had C64s. We were like older, and then you had the Spectrum. It tended to be the younger people who had the Spectrums, apart from my mate. But there was this one guy, and he was physically deformed. He had something wrong with his eye. I mean, his nickname was Popeye. I didn't call him that. I always thought that was cruel. The funny thing was, he wasn't a particularly pleasant person, probably because he got bullied when he was younger, and that wasn't a nice thing. But this guy, I can't remember what his name was. We'll call him Stephen. Stephen had an Atari 800 XL. And so we'd go along this computer club. There would be maybe 5 or 6 of us, all wear C64s, disk drives. You would have about 20 kids with their Spectrums, all copying games, all getting their C90 tapes. And then you had Stephen with his Atari, and he would set it up, and nobody would really talk to him. And I think it's because it was like a club, if you had a C64, then you could talk to other C64 people. We didn't, we didn't really talk to people with Spectrums, and we certainly didn't talk to anybody with an Atari. I wouldn't say we'd look down our nose at them. That wasn't really true, because I always remember walking past. The only games you ever seemed to kind of have running on the Atari was he used to play, Ball Blazer, which did look amazing. I'm not a fan of the game. He would play Stealth, which I always thought looked awesome. I was really jealous of that. What else did he play? I think he would sometimes play Rescue and Fractalis as well. So he used to have these games running, but like I said, nobody really spoke to him. But I always remember thinking, that looks nice. So anyway, that was kind of the mid-80s. And then, I never had any involvement with Atari. And then fast forward to probably 1986, 87, I got pals with a group of people, and one of these guys, or in fact there was 2 of them, 2 brothers, James and Paul, they had an Atari XL, and they never really used it. So I managed to borrow it for a couple of days. And I can't remember what games I played. The only game I remember playing was, what's it called? You play the part of a little Mexican guy. He goes up and does like a kind of platform game. Can't remember what it's called. I remember playing that, and I just had that for a couple of days, and I never really thought about it. And then fast forward to 2010, when I'd already started building up a collection of original hardware. I discovered eBay. I bought another C64. I got a Spectrum. I started to build up all these machines. And at that point, that was when I thought, you know what, I'm going to get an Atari. So the first Atari I got was an Atari 800 XL. No, it wasn't. It was an Atari 65 XE, which was basically, it was like a kind of, it was a newer version of the Atari XL. It had 64K of memory, and a great computer, absolutely fantastic. Then I thought, wait a minute, I want to see, I've always wanted to get an Atari 800, the original kind of, I call it the tank, because it was built like a tank. It actually had metal inside, it was solid. And the problem was, they go for daft money on eBay, and I thought, I'm not going to spend £300 on it. And then this one time I went on to, I think it was Gumtree, and there was a guy selling, was it Gumtree? Yeah, it was Gumtree. There was a guy selling an Atari 800 and an Atari 400, and he was only selling it for something like £100. And I'm like, wow. So I contacted him. I'm sure he actually said in his advert, must collect, I don't want to post. But I contacted him and I just said, look, I'm really interested in these computers. Would you be prepared to post it to me? And the guy very kindly agreed to do that. So yeah, this parcel arrived, and also remember, it was my mate Tony Temple. That was what it was. The agreement was, I contacted Tony Temple, and Tony kindly went and picked up the computers, and then he posted them on to me. That's what it was, because the guy didn't want to post them. And I always remember Tony messaging me saying, wow, you're not going to believe this package, Al. He says it is phenomenal. So anyway, a few days later, this massive box arrived, and inside was an Atari 800, an Atari 400, I think there was 2 disk drives, there was manuals, there was software, there was 2 tape decks, and this was like, it was like £100, 120 quid, something like that, an absolute steal. And yeah, absolutely over the moon. So yeah, and then that kind of fueled my me wanting to kind of get the other machines. So what did I buy? I then got an Atari 800 XL, which basically superseded the original Atari 800. And then I then went on to get an Atari 130 XE. Now I've sold Atari 800, the Atari 65, because I didn't really need 6 Ataris, so I got rid of that. But yeah, since getting these, I do play them all the time. I'm a massive fan of Atari. I think it's a phenomenal machine. In some ways, it's better than the C64. It's got better colour palette. I think it's a bit quicker as well. The downside to the Atari is the sprites. I don't think it's as easy to do multicoloured sprites as you could with a C64. But the Atari is an absolute phenomenal machine. If you ever get the chance to buy one, go and do it, because the great thing is about the Atari, they came out in like 1979, and so by the time the Spectrum came out, there was already an established software back catalogue of about 3 years, and some of the best games ever written for home computers were on the Atari. Stuff like Fort Apocalypse, Blue Max, Stealth, Rescuing Fractalis, Drelbs, the Eidolon, all these games. If you think they're good on the C64, go and check out the Atari. They're even better. They're just brilliant. You know, if you call yourself an 8-bit connoisseur, you know, for the original computer games, then you absolutely owe it to yourself to go and get an Atari. I love my Ataris. I would never be without them, not at all. Excuse me. So anyway, like, that's not really handy putting that there. I'll put that up here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to get a few questions. I don't think there's that many questions from last week. Right, okay, Mad Commodore. I was thinking of doing some showcase videos showing a game in the machine it would always be based on for technical reasons. There you go, Fractalis, Atari 800, 400, Shadow of the Beast, Amiga, Law of the West, C64. can you think of any games that were always going to be best on a particular machine format when released? Well, you know what, Mad Commodore, I mean, I've already answered that. Yeah, the Atari, all these games I mentioned are always, if you're going to play them on the Atari. You're saying there about the Amiga, yeah, Shadow of the Beast, it's not a great game, but it does look stunning. Drop Zone, I would say you've got to play that on Atari again. I know some people like the C64 one. The C64 one is awesome, but I would always pick the Atari one if I had the choice. C64 wise, let me think. Bruce Lee is excellent on the Atari and the C64. Let me think. Way of the Exploding Fist has got to be the C64. Whizball has got to be the C64. Summer Games, although it came out first on the Atari, it's better on the C64. So all the Summer Games, Winter Games, Summer Games 2, Beachhead 2, what else? I'm trying to think. Uridium, yeah, that's a no-brainer. You've absolutely got, and Super Pipeline 2. You've absolutely got to play these on the Atari, on the C64. Amstrad wise, no, I'm not that familiar with Amstrad, but if you're going to play any games, let me think. Sorcery, which is an early game by Virgin, I think it was. Sorcery, I was going to say Chase HQ. Chase HQ on the Amiga, not on the Amiga, on the Amstrad and the Spectrum was awesome. Let me think. Renegade, you've got to play it on the Amstrad. Gryzor, I think, is probably got to be an Amstrad game. Steve Davis Snooker, I'm going back, and probably Blagger. I actually prefer, although Blagger came out on the C64, I always preferred the Amstrad one. ZX Spectrum games, Manic Miner, I know Panther UK is going to hate me for that. Manic Miner, God, let me think. Any of the Ultimate games, though I have to say Attic Attack on the C64, which came out a couple of years ago, is phenomenal. It really is. But if you want to scratch that nostalgia itch, then you play it on the Spectrum. School Days, what else? Trashman, Monty. No, I was going to say Monty on the Run. No, not at all. Jet Set Willy. They're going to be Spectrum games. BBC, I don't know that many, but I think you would want to play. Now this is a split decision. If you're going to play Chucky Egg, play the BBC. A lot of people say the Spectrum, but I prefer the BBC one. Elite, for obvious reasons, I think you've got to play. If you're going to play that game, you need to play it on Elite. Apparently the best version of the original Elite was on the Archimedes, so there you go. But yeah, good question, Mad Commodore, and thanks for that. GTB Films, funny that you specifically mentioned Chase HQ. I remember getting my Spectrum and thinking it was great. I didn't know anyone with a C64, so I was only comparing against the Electron and the Apple II in the school. My sister was suitably unimpressed with the Spectrum, and it was only when Chase HQ came out years later she said, "That's what I expected games to look like 3 years ago." It just took a while for programmers to get the best from the Spectrum and its limitations, I think. Great waffle, and look forward to other machines. Cheers, Alan, thank you very much. Milthy Swinbuckle. Oops, hang on, I've just hidden the question. During your many years of gaming, you must have come across a hell of a lot of boss fights. My questions to you this week are, which boss fights have been your favourites? Which boss fights have caused you the most grief to get past? And have you ever given up in a game because a boss proved just too tough to beat? Good question, Milthy. Unfortunately, as you know, I am not particularly good at games, and so I've not had that many boss fights. I think my boss fights, I think my favourite boss fights tend to be, I think my favourite one would have to be the very first level of R-Type. I know it's a memory game, but I love it, and it's actually, once you suss out how to do it, it's actually very, very simple. So yeah, the bosses in R-Type were phenomenal. What ones did I hate? There's two tanks in level 1 of Raiden, the arcade game, and yeah, it took me quite a long time to get past them. You've got to kind of just keep shooting them constantly. They were pretty tough. I can't think, I mean, there's been plenty of other boss fights in 8 and 16-bit games that I couldn't get past, but the boss fights in more kind of recent games, in particular, Bioshock, the original Bioshock had a boss fight at the very, very end. It was the very, very last level, and I stupidly saved it just before I went up in the lift, not realising, you know, to be fair to me, I didn't realise that this was going to be the final boss fight, and I only had like a tiny wee bit of energy, and so I got to you went up in this lift and you had this boss fight and I died, and I would reload and I only had a tiny wee bit of energy, so I kept playing it, and eventually got to a point I thought, I can't be bothered with this, I'm not enjoying it, and I just switched it off, and that was it. And oddly, the same thing happened in, is it Bioshock Infinity, which was the third Bioshock. It was the most recent one. I mean, it came out probably about 10 years ago, and there's a level where you're on this big balloon, is it, what do you call them, these big balloons, Zeppelin I think it was, and you're basically trying to protect this kind of thing from getting destroyed, and all these bosses are coming down. It's not really so much a boss fight, it's multiple bosses. You've got all these bad guys coming down and just hammering you constantly. And I could play it, I could last for maybe 10-15 minutes, and then I would die, and then it would go back to the very start again, and it just frustrated the hell out of me. And that's why I've always maintained, I really wish modern companies that make software would give people the option to cheat. You know, whether it's you want infinite energy, or you want infinite ammunition, or you want to pick weapons, please, please, please give us the option, because at the end of the day, I deserve the right to be able to complete a game, and when you get to my age and you're pants at a game, it's frustrating as hell to get so far in the game and then having to give up. So that's probably my kind of boss level stories, Milfy. So good question. Mad Commodore, this isn't a question. Windows 10 is a forced update operating system. That is the worst aspect for me. Yeah, you're right. I remember coming downstairs one day, and I went upstairs and my computer had Windows 8 in it. I came downstairs, I think it was the following morning, and I had Windows 10 in it. I'm like, well, how did that happen? I am forced to endure the incompetence of Microsoft. PC hardware is awesome. The operating choices today, however, are not more efficient or more reliable than my 1987 Amiga 1000, and the forced updates are just a step too far. Right now, tapping the mouse pad on my keyboard does nothing because of some stupid forced update a few months ago, and my video editor magically crashes twice as often now. These are problems I never had on my Amiga 1000 running DigiView, DigiPaint and Deluxe Paint 3 all at the same time. The mouse never stopped working, and I never needed to reboot my Amiga, so I could produce an animation in DPaint 3 without it crashing. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mad Commodore, though I have to say, I personally don't have any issues with, I never had any issues with Windows 7, I never really had any issues with Windows 8, and I don't have any issues with Windows 10. I don't mind it at all. I personally think it's quite a good operating system, and I'm not really looking forward to getting a forced update onto Windows 11, but anyway, we'll see. And the very last comment by Country Roadist, he said there, where is Boogie Woogie, or I Can Boogie this week? LOL, oh yeah, rest in peace Scotland. And I replied, not to worry, England will be home shortly, at least we know we're pish. And I still stand by that, Country Roadist. As I did say there, England thoroughly deserved victory, but they need to ignore the media hype and take each game one at a time. Anyway, listen guys, that is it. I'm going to get going. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Thanks as always to all the support. I will be along, hopefully, 7 o'clock till 9 on Sunday. It's going to be part 3, the final part of my Zap issue 1. I'm playing through Zap issue 1, basically picked the top 64 Commodore 64 games. I got about kind of halfway through it the other last week, so I'm going to continue with that. Yeah, finally guys, listen, I hope you tune in on Sunday. Thanks to all the support, donations and that kind of stuff. It is well appreciated. Until next time, I'll put my teeth back in again. Until next time, guys, have a great weekend, and as always, thank you very, very much for watching.